Paterson, the product training specialist here at Symetrix. And today's topic is the USB recording and playback feature of the Radius NX series, as well as the media manager for my file management. This feature is currently only available on our Radius NX series DSPs via the USB host port on the rear of each unit, directly adjacent to the USB audio port, which is for routing analog audio to and from a computer, but this is a separate function. Using the USB host port allows you to record directly to most USB storage media. This media could be a thumb drive or any device that is compatible with the USB protocol. However, not all devices are created equally, and some may not function reliably. Luckily, we do have a suggestion, as we've tested extensively with the SanDisk 256 gigabyte UltraFit USB 3.1 flash drive. And you can see the model number there. And we've had zero issues. The storage media must be formatted to either exFAT or FAT32 in order to mount properly to the Radius NX series and be usable. Currently, our USB recording and playback function supports the WAV uncompressed audio file format only. Other formats will not be usable or visible by this feature. So the recording and playback modules are located in the Composer toolkit directly under the control modules, as seen above, in their own section titled Recording and Playback. Both recording and playback each have their own subcategory, and by default, only the custom option is visible until you add a module into your design. More about this once we jump directly into Composer. Now, when you place a custom recording module for the first time, the options available include from 1 to 8 channels per module. Up to a total of 8 channels can be placed in whatever configuration you desire. In this example, we have a single 8-channel module on the left, and on the right, 8 separate 1-channel modules. It should be stressed that there is a total maximum of 8 channels capable per DSP. You may also configure them for either separate or combined stop record functionality with either dual or single buttons respectively. And we'll get into how that looks when we get back into Composer. But effectively, it's just do you have a single button for stop and record, or do you have a single button for record and a single button for stop? Now, with the playback function, as with recording, when placing a custom module for the first time, the options available include from 1 to 8 channels per module. And again, up to 8 channels can be placed in any configuration. To the left, there's a single 8-channel module. To the right, 8 single-channel modules. And not to sound repetitive, but the playback module may also be configured for separate or combined stop or playback functionality, stop or play, with either dual or single buttons respectively. Another great feature is the ability to leverage the Radius NX's web server to connect and manage your media content directly on a USB device from any web browser on the network. You can edit, create playlists, and much more. Also, to access the media manager, both the recording and playback modules have a button that you see here that will directly open in your default web browser. You may also directly enter the IP address of the Radius NX and access the ArcWeb and select Media Manager from the menu as you see here. All right, without much further ado, we're going to jump right into Composer. All right, so here we are. Here's our site view in Composer, and let's go ahead and dig in so we can see what we have programmed currently. So with this example file, as you can see, I have 2 modules that are 8 channels each. So I have an 8-channel recording module and an 8-channel playback module. Of course, as you can see over in the toolkit, this is where I would grab them in the recording and playback section. Now, let's go ahead and drag in. Since I already have the maximum, let's show you what happens. So this is the dialog that opens when you initially drag in the module to place. In this case, the recording module. The playback module is much the same. So you have a drop-down menu that allows you to change the inputs from 1 through 8, and you can change the name here directly. Should be noted that the default will always be recording module, and the same with playback. It'll be playback module. And then this is where you can select whether it's separate momentary record and stop and single record stop buttons. Okay, and then let's press OK. So I was online, but now I got kicked offline because I added another module. But now we have 9 channels, and I had mentioned earlier that only a maximum of 8 is possible. So let's go ahead and try to go online. And we're going, and we failed because we have exceeded the maximum of 8 channels of audio recording. So let's go ahead and delete that unit and then go back online. And it should be noted that's 8 channels of recording and 8 channels of playback total, not just 8 of either. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the recording module first, and then we'll jump into the playback and then finally the media manager. But let's just take a look at what it looks like in our site file. I mean, much similar to the example that we showed in the slide. So right now, here's my 8-channel module. And as I had created it earlier, I created it with a single stop record button. And that's being controlled. As you can see, here's our control node right here. And oh, I knocked myself offline. Oh, well, no big deal. We'll go back online again. Here's the control right here, 1 button latched, that is doing the actual logic control for that module. But let's just jump in really quick and take a look at what that looks like. So it looks effectively like any of our other modules. I mean, as you can see, the 8 channels have their own input volume control, mutes, and metering, as well as labeling and a limit LED. And just 1 second, I'll drop these. There we go. Go ahead and take care of those labels. There we go. So, and I have a signal currently that is available. So as you can see, we do have metering available, and we can change the level that's going into the USB recording. And the meat of it is down below in the shuttle area, quote unquote. So as I mentioned earlier, I created this module with a single record stop button, and this is how that would function. So it's just a single button, a latching button, that once it's engaged, it will flash. Not only will the button flash indicating recording, but you will also get this LED indicating recording is currently happening. And while you're recording, as you can see, I have my record length. And then down below, I have my available time, which is slowly ticking down, but you can barely, actually, you can't see it because I have so much time available. So time available is going to be based on 3 factors. A, the size of your USB device, whether it's an 8 gig, 1 gig, or in my case, a 256 gig stick. Also, the format of the recording type, your bit depth and sample rate. We'll get into that much later. Actually, not much later, just around the corner, actually. So if I go ahead and press the recording button again, I've stopped, and we just have our record length up to the point it stopped. And of course, I now have 13 days of recording left at the current recording resolution. So down below, we have a status field, a folder field, and a file prefix field. Now, the status field is static, and it will just indicate conditions. It's a conditional field that will give you information. In this case, it's showing me that the status of the USB device, I've stopped recording, or it'll show as ready, or it will show any problem that is currently happening. And if I were to accidentally remove the USB device, it'll show as media removed or no media. Below that, I have folder. Now, when you plug in your USB device, Composer will create a default folder, a default recording folder. And that's always going to be the case. However, you can further organize by entering in a folder, a secondary folder here, which will be within the main recording folder. So you're creating another folder within the main folder. And that's how you do it. If you leave it blank, it will record to the recording folder. And then down below, we have file prefix, and it's exactly what you think it is. This is the prefix of the recorded file. If you leave this blank, it will follow a format that we will get to in the record options. Now, backing up slightly, let's go to the auto start button. So the auto start button is what you think it is. It allows the module to, or the DSP to auto start on certain conditions. Now you'll notice that it won't auto start with you offline. You have to satisfy two conditions with this engaged. Either A, I go online if I'm currently offline, or B, I power cycle the unit. That is what will cause the unit to auto record or auto start. All right, with that in mind, let's go down below. Oh, I got the limit hitting on that one of my channels. Oh, goodness. All right, so, and then down below, we have our record options, media manager, and eject media buttons. I'm going to address the eject media button because that is exactly what you think it is. You press that button, it will unmount the USB drive. However, you need to be aware that you must either power cycle the DSP or physically remove the USB and reinsert it in order to remount the USB. So only use this if you are aware of both conditions. You will need to either power cycle or remove the DSP or the USB and place it back. Now, Media Manager button, we discussed that earlier in the slideshow, but let's go to record options because this is where the heavy lifting is. So let's go ahead and click this. And here are our recording options. Now, I had mentioned format earlier. We only support the WAV format. And then you can do that in one of two manners. Now, you can either record in a single multi-channel file, and with this module, that would mean 8 channels in a single file. Most DAWs or digital audio workstations will be able to discern that this is a multi-channel file, as well as our playback feature, which we will get to. So you can have either from 1 to 8 channels in a, 2 to 8 channels in a single multi-channel file. Or you can separate them into individual files per channel. In this case, I would have 8 files, each one representing a different channel. All right, I'm just going to go back and put it to default. Default, I should mention, is a single multi-channel file. Now we have the sample rate and bit width settings. So currently I have mine set to 12 kilohertz for sample rate and bit width 16-bit. But as you can imagine, if I go to the minimum, which is 8-bit 12K hertz, I should, and it will tell you that it's going to change the amount of time that you have available. So with the minimum settings, I have 26 days of recording time available with that 256 gigabyte USB stick. I've already done some recording, so you can see I've had some recording done. All right. But if I were to go to the maximum, because you can go ahead and set that to 48K, but 48K, by the way, is the default setting for bit width, and I can set that for 24-bit, and that will affect the available time, of course. And in this case, I've now dropped to 52 hours of available time. Now, getting into file name, as I mentioned previously, we have file name protocol, which you can set what kind of prefixes your files will save as. In this case, you can see that in the file name pattern configured, and currently we have prefix, month, day, year, hours, minutes, and then sequence 1. So we have the options of doing a start date, which is if I unselect that, you'll see that that disappears in the pattern configured. And we also have the ability to change the orientation, whether year, month, day, year, whatever, whichever one you prefer. We also have a start time, and this is rounded to the nearest minutes place, not seconds. And then if we uncheck that, that disappears from the pattern configured. The other thing is the sequence. So what the sequence is, this is added to the file when it's being recorded in the pattern you select. You can either disable it, which it does not give you the sequence at all, or you enable it. And if the default is never, which means every time you record, it sequentially adds 1 to that digit. So right now it says sequence 1, you hit record and then stop, and then record again. You now have sequence 2, then sequence 3, ad nauseum. Now you can have that set to continuously increment, or you can set it to restart on a power cycle, which means you turn the DSP on and off, it'll reset, and then from that moment on, sequence 1, sequence 2, etc. Or you can set it up to a daily schedule. So at midnight, it resets to a sequence 1 daily. Now, then we have duration of recording. So you can set this is set by default. And what this means is there's a maximum file length before it stops, and not necessarily stops automatically. It can either stop automatically, depending on your settings, or sequentially add another file seamlessly. So if right now I have it set to maximum file length of 5 minutes, and the selection by default continuously record once started, what that means, it will continue to record, but in a different sequence. So after 5 minutes, it will start recording sequence 2 seamlessly. Or you can turn this off, and once it hits 5 minutes, it stops recording, period, until you restart. And then all sync rollover time means that this time can become out of sync with when you're recording. So if you engage this option, it will add in multiples of this time. All right, moving on. So we also have auto delete functionality. Not much really we can say about this, but you can set it to whether it's disabled or you're in the folder, the main folder, whatever main folder you were in, or a main folder with a matching prefix that you have set. You can also set it to file age, so you can only delete things older than what you have set. And then we have a size limit, so you can have smaller files, 500 megabytes, all the way up to 200 gigabits. Or you can just, when the USB device is full, it starts deleting the oldest based on this setting. And lastly, settings-wise, this is where it gets kind of fun because you do have the option of using FTP functionality to access the files, not necessarily only a web browser. So you can use a program like, for instance, FileZilla to FTP into the device and directly access those files to pull off if you're off-site and you just want to do some remote managing, or you just want to remotely go into the units and pull this data off. And you can also set the username and password. This username and password is set for the media manager when you're signing in. All right, so those are the settings for recording. So now let's jump into playback. All right, so I'm going to open up the playback module. Now you'll notice down below that I have this playback module. This is set up with a separate playback and stop button for control purposes. And here I have my little radio button that either stops or plays based on the button itself. And I can add that to whatever control I want, or I can just simply go here and assign. So the playback module is fairly similar to the recording, which obviously it's different enough that we need to go through it. So let's go to the gain area on the right. So you'll notice that this is an 8-channel device or 8-channel module, but I only have a single gain. That is intentional. It is only a single gain that is broadly adjusting all of the channels that are configured. Now, currently, I am playing a stereo file, and you'll notice that the stereo file is only playing on channels 1 and 2. That is intentional. It will not copy to unused channels. It will only play in the channels that was recorded onto. And the other similarities are that we have along with the gain, we have the mute. That's a master mute for all 8 channels, as well as the media manager button and eject media. We don't have the record options because this is not a recording device. So that's one thing that is omitted. Now the shuttle area is a little bit different. I mean, obviously we have our fast forward and rewind. So rewind and fast forward. And then we have a stop, which is separate from the play, as well as pause. Pause functions exactly as you would expect. And the same with auto start. Auto start, once engaged, is engaged exactly the same as a record feature. You have to either go online from being offline or power cycle the unit to automatically start playing. We also have a loop. The loop feature will obviously loop what you have set here in the file area, and we'll get to that now. So down below, we have our status, our static status page or status field. Much like the recording status, it gives you what event-based messages. Right now I'm playing a recording, and it's telling me that it's playing a recording. I also have time that is playing and time remaining. Now, the good thing about the time that is playing, because you can set this, let's just go ahead and stop. And let's just say I want to go to a specific time that I know. Like you have a 4-hour recording and you want to go to, well, I don't have a 4-hour recording right here. I have a 4-minute. So I'm just going to go to timestamp 225. And now I'm at timestamp 225 for that recording. So you can directly enter the time for that current recording. And you'll notice here the status has changed to stop because we changed the event. Now, how you go about programming what you're playing. So right now we have 3 folder levels, I should say, of navigation. We have root, folder, and file. You don't necessarily have to use all 3 depending on your file structure, but generally speaking, you can choose the root. And in this case, I have, on my root, I have playlists, recordings. That's the default. And playlists is also created as well once you start creating playlists. But here's my root. So I can change it from playlists to recordings. And let's just do that as my root. Hit OK. And then the folder. And this is only going to show you the root, which in this case, we have these folders in that root. So let's go to courtroom 3. And then do we have any files in courtroom 3? Yes, we do. So we can select our recordings in courtroom 3, which happens to be ham salad sequence 28. And then we can go ahead and play this. However, down below, you'll notice we have playlists. So these take priority. So if you have a playlist engaged, this will actually take priority in the playback over a single file. So if you want your files to play above, you need to make sure that nothing is in the playlist area. Once you add something to the playlist, that takes priority. So, and here's going to be your list of playlists. You'll notice I have that little button right here on the right. So I play that, and then it'll automatically show me the root and all of my playlists I've created. And of course, we have shuffle and repeat. Shuffle just takes the current playlist and shuffles it from A to Z. It doesn't randomize it. It takes the entirety of the playlist. Like if you have 32 files in the playlist, it'll shuffle them and play all of them before shuffling again. And the same with repeat. So the repeat will just repeat the playlist as it was currently set up, whether it was shuffled or in line. And then we have our shuttle features. Fast forward, beginning. I mean, this is the begin button, so you can go back to the beginning of the playlist or fast forward through files here. Now, it should be noted that on both the playback and recording module, you can add these to control screens easily. So here we go to the recording module, and here is our controls that we had. So we can see our fields. We have our stopped auto start button. That's going to be our single button for recording and stopping, of course, and our record options. Now, it should be noted that record options are not available on all formats. So if you were to export this to a T5, it would not be available. Only within Composer or on your computer, which is going to be SimView. And then we have the eject media button. So everything, most of the controls can be added to a SimView screen. And then there's a few differences between like a T5 and a control server, but you can add those to your control screens as well. We do have a full list in the help file that describes what you cannot export to a T5 or control server and what doesn't export to SimView. That's going to be under things that do not export to SimView. And then I mentioned the playback. So here's our playback. Now, you may have noticed that I have created the size of this control screen to coincide with the T5. That was intentional because I like to design things based on the smallest thing possible, and that would be this device. So with a playback, you can see that you have the time remaining status, loop, auto start, and all of the other controls as along with playlist. The only thing that is going to be different when you export to the T5 is you do not have access to this root folder. It is read only in that case on a T5 for intentional reasons. So it is only on the T5, it is read only. That may change here. That's a design request that we may or may not include in the future. But along with adding these controls to a control screen, you can also have third-party control because you can add IDs to each control. Like in this case, let me go ahead and make these available. So now you can see that I have IDs associated with controller IDs, I should say, with the stop button, the auto start, and even the LED for monitoring purposes. So these can be controlled by third-party devices like Extron and Crestron as long as you utilize our API. Additionally, you can also set these up to an event based on presets. So you can set presets based on those controls, of course, just like anything else within Composer, and then create an event. You can trigger events like if it's a courtroom that records the same time every day, you would just set that up as an event. It would start recording in the morning and then end recording at night when everyone goes home automatically. So that's how you would do that. Now, let's move on to the Media Manager. So it's already open on my computer. So I've already navigated to the Media Manager here. And as I mentioned previously, you can either utilize the buttons in the recording and playback module, or you can directly enter the IP address if it's known. And then what happens is this is what you're presented with, is just the typical arc web of any of our DSPs. And then in the menu, you select Media Manager. Now, of course, because it's a little separate, so you have to enter your credentials that you set earlier, which in this case is admin password, because, you know, it's always the bloody default. And this is the default view. So you're going to see your playlists folder if you've created playlists, but you're definitely going to see the recordings folder, which is created by default. And the system volume information, that's just something that pops up on my computer because I have certain settings on my computer where I see everything. You won't necessarily have to do the same thing. But anyway, so let's get into recording. So as I mentioned earlier, you can manage your files that you have on your USB directly. So you can select them with this selection box, and then you have options available to you where you can add files. You can download this file. So this WAV file right here, if I select it, I can download it, which means it's downloading to my computer through the web browser. And the same thing is you can edit the selected item. You can change the name. So let's do this. So you can change the file name. We can also change the location directly. So The other thing you can do is delete it, which if that's what you want to do, you can. Also, that's very important, you can play the file. Now, when you play the file in the Media Manager, you're streaming through the web browser. You are not playing through the DSP. So you can listen, you can sample the recordings without playing through the DSP if it's at a courtroom, so you're not playing something back that they can hear. This is only via the browser. Then, of course, you can change the range, and you can go ahead and place the location wherever you want. All right. And then, as you can see, also in our playlists, as you navigate and go deeper into the file structure, we have the buttons to go directly back. So in this case, I can just hit USB and go right to the root instead of having to go back every single time or go upwards of one folder level every single time. Now, and that's your files area. But now we go to playlists. So when you click on playlists, it changes a little bit. So when you click on that, that will create your playlist folder. And then you can go ahead and add a playlist or upload files. So in this case, we can add whatever new playlist we want, or we can manage our current playlist. We can click on our playlist, and here's our recordings. It should be noted that these are references only. These aren't actually the files. It's just a reference to that file. So let's just say you want to change the orientation of these in order, whatever order you want. And here's the order buttons as we have here. Here's extreme top, extreme bottom, or we can go one at a time, up and down, and then we can change the range of whatever we're selecting. We can also add to our playlist by uploading files. The other thing I should mention, and something that is not properly named, is the delete. You're not deleting the file. If you're in the playlists, you're not deleting the file if they're selected. You're deleting the reference of that file. So you can delete it safely here. And if you go back to files, it will still be in your file category, just not in the current playlist. And that is basically it. But that is effectively the end of the presentation. Thanks for watching. If you need more information, you can go to our website at www.symetrix.co, that's .co, or you can give us a call at 425-778-7728, extension 5, and talk to one of our product sales engineers. We'd be more than happy to help you along. And with that, have a great day and take care of yourself.